Enterprise teams deploying models on Google Cloud are running into a quiet but consequential shift. Vertex AI now includes configurable model guardrails, safety filters, and grounding controls that sit between your prompt and the model response. For teams with established CI/CD pipelines and data compliance workflows, this changes what gets tested, what gets logged, and where responsibility sits. A model call that passed validation last quarter may now return filtered or modified output without any change to your own code. If your pipeline treats the model endpoint as a stable black box, these guardrails introduce a new layer of variability. Understanding where they sit in the request lifecycle, and what they actually control, is the first step toward adapting your workflows. Let's walk through what matters here. Vertex AI is Google Cloud's managed platform for deploying and serving machine learning models, including foundation models like Gemini. When you send a request to a Vertex AI endpoint, the platform can apply safety filters, responsible AI configurations, and grounding checks before and after the model generates its response. These are not optional suggestions. They are platform-level controls that can block, modify, or annotate outputs based on configurable thresholds for categories like harassment, dangerous content, or sexually explicit material. Google documents these under its responsible AI practices and the Vertex AI Safety Settings API. Critically, these guardrails operate at the serving layer, not the model layer. That distinction matters because your CI/CD pipeline likely tests the model artifact or the prompt logic, but may not account for platform layer interventions that change what the end user actually receives. Here is the core issue for enterprise pipelines. Most CI/CD setups for ML applications test at the model level or the application level. You validate prompt templates, check output schemas, maybe run regression tests against expected responses. But Vertex AI guardrails operate between those two layers. When a safety filter blocks or modifies a response, your application receives a different output than the model actually generated, or it receives a block signal. If your integration tests don't account for filtered responses, blocked categories, or grounding metadata, you may ship an application that silently degrades in production. On the compliance side, guardrail configurations become part of your audit surface. If a regulated workflow depends on consistent model behavior, the guardrail settings need to be version controlled alongside your model configuration, not left as a console setting someone toggled manually. This is infrastructure as code territory, applied to safety policy. 3 things teams tend to overlook here. First, guardrail thresholds are not binary. Vertex AI lets you set sensitivity levels per category. A threshold set to medium for one category may block outputs that a low threshold would pass. If different team members configure these inconsistently across environments, staging and production behave differently in ways your test suite cannot catch unless it explicitly tests for filter behavior. Second, grounding with Google Search or enterprise data sources adds citation metadata to responses. If your downstream pipeline doesn't parse that metadata, you lose traceability, which can be a compliance gap for regulated industries. Third, these settings can change with API version updates. Google's documentation notes that safety filter behavior may evolve. That means pinning your API version and monitoring Google's release notes becomes a compliance activity, not just a DevOps convenience. The takeaway is practical. If your team deploys on Vertex AI, treat guardrail and safety filter configurations as first-class artifacts in your pipeline. Version control them. Include filtered and blocked response scenarios in your integration tests. Monitor API version changes for shifts in safety behavior. And make sure your compliance documentation reflects the platform layer controls, not just the model itself. This is not about disagreeing with guardrails. It is about acknowledging that they are a moving part in your system and treating them with the same rigor as any other dependency. If this kind of grounded, specific analysis is useful to you, subscribe to the Latent Dispatch. We track meaningful AI changes with context, not hype.